This is the premiere, the debut, the pilot, if you will, of the first episode of my podcast, Low Philosophy. I recommend you do an activity while you're listening to it because it's a bit awkward you just staring off into space and listening to some random guy talk about the nature of life and perception in this episode. So go on a walk, do some colouring in, put your socks on and get ready. Sit back, relax. Don't relax though, because do something. Let's get into the podcast. So I'm going to be hitting some ideas back and forth with just myself. I'm going to put an idea out there, think about it for a bit, and then say my thoughts. And I guess all of that is guided by my perception of reality, which is the topic today. So everything that I share and everything that is me is a reflection of my perception and how I see and view the world. For example, if you've grown up in a very negative environment and you have a very negative perception of the world, you are going to put that negative perception onto everything that you output, and that influences what you get back, because if you're giving negativity, you're going to get negativity back from the world. So it's really about where you start. Moving on from that, I think everyone is in a way blinded by their perception. So I say that because if you can only experience what you perceive to be true, then everything else, even if it is categorically true, you will kind of block out because of your perception. And I think that's really dangerous, because that just births ignorance in so many things. Like if you've grown up in the KKK, you're going to think like, well, all black people are just disgusting. But obviously that's categorically untrue. But their perceptions are very fixed, and a fixed mindset rather than a flaccid, fluid mindset is quite dangerous in the sense that it can cause a lot of harm through ignorance in so many people. We're going to move on to the next topic, which is particularly relevant nowadays, right? And it's humor. Humor is the perception that something is funny, and if someone perceives something to be funny, they're going to want more of that thing, and so therefore they strengthen their perception. But humor, in comedy in general, I'm somewhat of a comedian myself, you know what I'm saying, but in comedy in general, the consensus of the community is that it's much harder to do edgier acts. This is because of obviously all the political correctness nowadays that people have to adhere to. Whereas before, this wasn't really a widely known topic. You could kind of say whatever you want. But now, it's much more difficult to express your feelings truthfully and make it funny, because there's always a risk of offending someone. But this proves the point that perception creates your reality. So if you perceive something to be funny, then to you it will be funny. But if someone else perceives that thing to be not funny and offensive, then it will be to them. So it's kind of hard to judge where perception comes into the comedy and the humor of things, because you can't cater for everyone. But also, if you did cater for everyone, it wouldn't be as funny. Because, partially sometimes the people that find it funny because other people are hurt, which is, I don't know how ethically moral that is, because if you're laughing at someone else's expense, then obviously you're making yourself feel good, but then this is outweighed by the fact that someone else is feeling bad. So I don't know if that's, I guess there are many other instances in today's society where that is completely accepted, like say perhaps the UFC. People are entertained by people literally almost beating the other person to death, and I can't lie, it's very entertaining, but I don't know how morally correct that is, and so that was the point. Humor's a weird one. Humor can take you far in life, but you have to tune your humor to people's perceptions, which I find really, really enticing and really kind of challenging, because you have to kind of, I don't know how to feel them out. You have to kind of guess their vibe they're on, and if you guess wrong, then it's a doozy. But if you guess correctly, it's really rewarding. So for example, if you see a Karen and you know what humor that Karen's like, and you give her that, they're gonna like you. So you can tune, or personally I do, tune every interaction to that specific person, and so that they're experiencing something that's similar to them, so they relate more. And I don't know if that is, well, you could argue that that's like very fake of me to do that, but I don't feel it to be fake. I feel it to be catering to people. I still experience those things, and in a way I am all of those things because I can do them. I can be a Karen, but I can also be an edgy teenager, and I can also talk to adults about business, so I can be all of those things. So I feel like I am, and it's not fake for me to do all of those things. I want to talk about arguments and conflict. In conflict, both parties think that they are right, think that they're on the right side. They are the good guys, but they both have diatomically opposing views, which means they directly clash with each other. This causes a conflict, obviously, because they both want to convince each other that they are right, but obviously one of them has to be wrong if it is a diatomically opposing view. And so it causes a lot of friction, I want to call it. But I mean, the only way to stop an argument, truly finish an argument and stop it, is to accept the other person's argument. And that might sound counterintuitive, but that is how you win. Because let's run both of the scenarios. Let's run the scenario where you counterattack. They propose an idea to you, and you say, no, that is wrong. Now, they propose another idea to try and convince you that it is correct, and then you propose a counter idea to that, and that keeps going and going and going until one of you capitulates, gives in, and says, okay, you're right, or you agree to disagree, which means that you will never know if you were right. Maybe, but you're both wrong. Who knows? Like, humans are we're pretty stupid. Like, I'm just speaking from my own experience, but I just make up stuff on the spot, and it seems to be right, which I feel like it's very righteous of me to do. Like, it's very I don't know how to describe it. It's very, what's the word? It's kind of hypocritical for me to do, because I can say all of these random facts, but they're not really facts. They're just my opinion that I've guessed, but they usually turn out to be okay. But without the actual knowing of these things, it's kind of hard to say that, oh, I'm right about everything, because you're guessing most of the time. So you don't really have that memory. You kind of have an intuitive sense to know what is right and what is wrong. But I guess factual arguments aren't very common nowadays, because people don't really argue over facts. It's odd how similar circumstances and similar environments can produce completely different perceptions, and I think that's due to the slight differences in personality. Because I proposed a question to one of my friends the other day, and it was, if someone had the exact same experience as you, do you think they would be you, and do you think they would make all the choices that you make? And I think he gave me a bit of a cop-out answer, but I thought about it when you're laying at night in bed, and you just look up at the sky, and you're just like, wow, and you and you kind of think about all the things that you think about. You clear your inbox of thoughts for the day because you're so occupied throughout the day. So that was in my inbox. So I picked it up, I looked at it, examined it from multiple dimensions, and I came out with the conclusion that no, they wouldn't necessarily have to pick, because life is a series of decisions. I mean, yeah, your decisions define where you go. So life is a series of decisions, and your experience is defined by the decisions that you make. And so the answer was no, they would not be the same as you, because they still have the element of randomness. But I guess if they did choose all of the same choices as you, they would be in the exact same position as you. But I think that also comes down to personality. But that begs the question. The root question is personality solely defined by environment? And I think the answer is no. I think there may be some genetic, hereditary, like passed down from parents and ancestors. Excuse me, I'm in a cupboard right now. It's the only quiet place in my house. It could be hereditary. I have no idea, but I feel like where you originate from and where you come from has a huge influence on top of environment. Because don't get me wrong, environment has what is one of the biggest factors of your perception. So how your parents view the world but I guess that is your environment again, and I guess how you were born and who you were born from is your environment. It could be classed as an environment. So I mean, if we are solely based off of our environment, then we really have no control, because I can't really control my environment other than I couldn't control who my parents were. I couldn't control where I went to school, or where I could influence it slightly, but there's no way that I couldn't go to a school in Alabama, for example, because I don't live in Alabama, you know. But I wouldn't want to go to Alabama. No disrespect to any Alabamians, but I couldn't have done that because I'm not equipped to go there, and there's no way for me to do that. And so there is a certain amount of choices that we have in our lives, but it begs the question, how much control do we actually have? And you can go really deep into this, and it's not a very nice answer. And the answer is we have literally no control. But it's kind of liberating at the same time, because then you can kind of become attached from the outcome. So if we follow the line of logical conclusion, so if we are just a sum of our environment and our decisions which we don't have real control over, because I mean, every logical decision is kind of already predetermined for us, and it's quite difficult to make the illogical decision unless there is an emotional attachment or a different. I don't know how to define control. So perhaps control is it has to be the choosing of the conscious choice of paths to take, or the routes to take in your life, because all of life could be considered as a multiple choice test, really, like a constant multiple choice test with quite interesting environmental circumstances, which is quite funny, to be honest. But if life is just a multiple choice test, then that's kind of liberating, because we know it's just all it doesn't matter if we get it wrong, because it wasn't our choice. But also, if we get it right, it also wasn't our choice. So it's kind of neutralizes any suffering or any unnecessary suffering that the pain of choosing the wrong choice gives you. So we're going to go back to perception, like right at the start. So the perception when you're born, I think when consciousness enters the womb, I think the subconscious mind is just starting to develop, and it's starting to absorb the information around it. And that's why people play like Mozart and stuff and music like that, and like audiobooks. I don't know about audiobooks. I might try that to their child while they're still like in the mother's womb, and that is supposed to influence their subconscious mind from birth. I might do that actually, like just play them a bunch of Spanish songs so they learn Spanish, and then once I know they learn Spanish, play them Indian. They might get a bit confused though. Let's move on. So the subconscious mind, let's define that first, because that's kind of a broad statement to throw around without defining it. It's a hefty one. So the subconscious mind is the part of the mind where your consciousness doesn't go. So if you view your mind as a dark room, your consciousness is the light, your consciousness. I don't know how to your conscious awareness, that's a bad word. Conscious awareness is the torch in that room, and your torch shines the light, which is your consciousness, onto things and onto objects and onto thoughts, and that is your conscious daily experiential life. But your subconscious mind is everything else in the room, which influences the conscious thought, because it's still in the room, it's in the same room, however there's no awareness of it, which kind of makes it quite scary, but also quite expansive, because you can actually explore like the realms and like the vast biomes and fields of your mind. That's quite cool. That is quite cool. You could just sit in your room for days and days and just be with your own mind. And most people will go crazy, but that's because most people don't understand how to explore, and they don't have any means of exploring because most of them are plugged into their phones. That's an argument for a different day. But I think the exploration of the mind is one of the most satisfying and fulfilling tasks that a human could fulfill, because essentially we're all trapped by our biology and biology and circumstances. We can't really perceive anything outside of our 3 dimensions of space, 4 dimensions of space if you include time, and our physical, maybe our eyes could be, the world could be completely different to how we perceive it. So here's an example. Let's say bats don't see in color. Because it's so dark, they don't need to see in color. We only developed the color of the world because of fruits. We biologically, older humans needed to differentiate different types of fruits and colors help them to do that. And so that is the only reason that we see colors. But bats don't actually see color because they have no need to, and so their perception of the world is black and white, and there's no color. But they would never know the other. They can't know. They can't know anything other than what they know and experience. Know and experience are different things. To know something and to experience it is completely different. And I explain it like this: you can understand something intellectually, so you can comprehend it with your mind. Okay, I get that. And then you experience it, and then you understand and overstand what you're talking about, because you say, I know. Before, I know, and now you're like, I know. And I feel like a lot of people will resonate with that. Sorry, I got some phlegm in my throat. Obviously, I'm in a dusty cupboard because I don't want my family to hear some mad philosophy. I think it'll rattle their brains too much, and they don't like me talking about it all the time because it's quite depressing. It depends how you look at life, your perception. I mean, everything can be whittled down to perception, because it is the basis of how we see things and how we view things. Perception, that it is our perception. And so, if our perception is wrong, then essentially everything is wrong. And so, I don't know if I trust my perception anymore, because just the tiniest chance that it is deceiving me, which I have seen it do. Perceptions can deceive you. Perceptions can be deceiving. Just a slight chance that it is just deceiving, and deceiving in the way such that the truth is not what I can comprehend. Because that's all I want, really. I want the truth. I want the core. I want the middle bit. I want the essence. And if my experience my perception is fundamentally flawed to experience the core, the middle, the nectar of the lolly, I don't know how to the source is an SOURCE. Actually, both types of sources, source and source. If my perception can't actually view that, then I can't trust it at all. But it's the only thing that I have, because I can't perceive anything other than my perception. So it's quite a paradox. It is quite a paradox. I think changing your perception is incredibly important in life, because you allow yourself to step out of what you were. So, for example, if you're really sad all the time and you do a psychedelic, and you step into this incredible love and incredible, light and connectiveness, and you go back to the depression, you see, wow, my perception was completely altered, and so now I know that exists. Sorry, pardon me. I can work towards that, I just had a curry. And that's not racial, by the way, I did just have a curry. So that's why I think perception changes are so important. And one of the I'm a big advocate of meditation, because that is a free, an organic type of perception changer that can positively benefit your life, because you can have negative perceptional changes. Now we can go into, well, negativity is just a perception, because let's say your horse runs away, right? People say that's bad, and you say maybe. The next day your horse comes back with 7 horses, and then people say, wow, that's great luck, you have 8 horses now, and you say maybe. And then your son goes on the horse and he breaks his leg, and people go, oh, what bad luck, and you say maybe. And then the next day the government come around and say, they say, well, we need people for an army, can your son fight? And he can't, because he broke his leg the day before. And people say, well, what luck he was, that he could have died. And you say, well, maybe, so it's all a chain of events. You can be up one second, down the next, so it's difficult to latch onto one and stay there, because that's not the nature of anything, really. It's always fluctuating, always, constantly, which is quite scary, but also quite comforting. At least we're stable in the sense that we're certainly uncertain, which is another paradox. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Okay, so I'm going to derive the quote, I think therefore I am, cogito ergo sum, by Descartes. So he went crazy on this perception train, and he said, I don't trust any of my senses, I don't trust any of it, I don't want it. He went crazy on this perception train and said, well, I don't know if this is true, and I don't know if this is true, so I want to build something that is completely true, categorically true, and so I know this for sure, and we'll build off of there, so that we have a very firm base of where we know, because otherwise it's just wishy-washy. And that's what philosophy is. We're trying to get to the root of what it is and build off of that. And so he said, well, I can't trust any of my senses because they could all be wrong, which is fair enough. And then he said, I can't trust any of my thoughts, which is fair enough again. That's part of your senses. And then he said, can I be sure that I even exist? So can the perception of self be faked? Essentially is what he said. And he came to the conclusion that no, it can't be faked, because it's an irrefutable statement. And this is what I mean by irrefutable. So even if it was false, it would still be true, which is kind of crazy to think about. But with the statement, I think therefore I am, for something to question that it doesn't exist, because he questioned his own existence, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, to be that unsure about everything that you say, am I even a thing? But to even question the ability, this is quite hard to articulate, because I don't know if I can't see anyone's reaction, but I'm going to try and do it as slowly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. So for him to question, for him to kind of contemplate, if he was not a thing, he would have to be a thing for that to happen, because if he wasn't a thing, then it wouldn't happen and he wouldn't know, because he's not a thing. I'm going to say that again. So for him to question that he is a thing, he must be a thing. So if he was not a thing, he would not be able to question the not thingness, because he's not a thing. And I know that's kind of difficult to understand because it's outside of our perceptions, but if you're not a thing, you can't do anything. You're not a thing. Like, you're not anything. You're no thing. You're nothing. You can't do anything. There's nothing to do because you're nothing.
I'm not saying this to anyone, I'm saying experientially, if you are nothing, then you can't do anything. Like, when you're in deep sleep, what are you doing? You can't do anything. You're doing nothing. There's nothing there, and you're not doing anything. There's no time, there's no space, there's nothing to do. So you can't question that you're not a thing if you are not a thing. So that led him to the conclusion that, well, I have to be a thing to question that I'm not a thing. Therefore, I think, therefore I am. He thinks that he's a thing, so he has to be a thing. And I found another loop like that, right? The irrefutable statement, and it is that your beliefs create your reality. And it's quite similar to the no thing argument. So if your beliefs did create your reality, then they would create your reality, and that would confirm to you that that is the truth. So that is the true side. So let's consider that it is false. If you believe that your reality was that you did not create your reality, and it proved you correct in that you did not create your reality, then it would still be correct, because it still did create your reality of you thinking that it does not create your reality, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I hope you understood that. I might repeat it again. If it's a false statement, if the statement, I create my own reality, your mind creates your own reality, is probably a better representation. So if that statement was false, if you said to yourself, my thoughts and my mind does not create my reality, and then your thoughts and your mind don't create your reality, then it did create your reality because you chose that. So even if it was false, it would still be true. And that's why I really believe that your mind creates your own reality. Because if your mind didn't create your own reality, then, I mean, why would bats not see color? Your biological and physical attributes, like, confine how much you can perceive as absolute truth, which is what I'm trying to find, absolute truth. And I'm going to keep digging. I probably will never find it because, obviously, perception, but we're going to keep digging anyway. It'll be fun.
And with that, we're going to end the podcast here. A big thank you for everyone who listened, and I hope you had as much fun as I did throughout making this. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.